in the night. So that we do advertisement for the houses game.
Oh, like swap them around.
Thinking about kinky like 3 rooms.
Nice.
Where?
I
Okay.
don't know. Buttons.
Here we go. Okay, good. I think it should be working now. Yeah, welcome everybody. So I'm gonna talk about art direction as I promised, and a bit about creative direction overall. And I just wanted to name it how I do art direction. It's because I'm gonna tell a lot of things that are useful to do overall, but I'm also gonna, some of them are just the way that I do it, and everybody can do it differently if they so wish. It's just the ways that I am used to doing it, and there's no wrong ways. It's just great if you do it. That's the important part, really. So we are going to talk about firstly what is art direction. I'm gonna give you some tips on how to do it and how I do it. And yeah, let's start. So the difference between a creative director and art director is that the creative director is in charge of the entire team. They also can communicate with clients, oversee projects, and manage marketing campaigns. And the art director pays attention to visuals and then aesthetics and the art team only. For some projects that I have been on, for example, I would say for Death and Taxis, I was the creative director, and for Craft currently I'm as well, but for Broken Alliance I'm just the art director. But art direction was inside of that creative direction job of mine. So everything that I'm gonna talk about is gonna apply to working with people and also working with arts, but some of it can be just being the creative director of the project and all that. So yeah, and it also depends on how big, you can do it by yourself or in a big company as well. So firstly, art direction is two different things. It is firstly laying down a path and rules for visual design of the game or whatever project you're working on. So making up all the rules for the art, and step 2 or the other part of it is keeping to the rules and helping artists in the team do so too. And if you're a solo developer, that means you are the artist and the art director both. Anyways, and the creative director obviously as well. And it is super important that there's different ways. You can either set the road down in stone and keep to it, or you can let it change organically. So you can either do it like pre-planned, or as in game development there is like a lot of things that you need to change, iterate on. Then you can do it as you go along, but it's good to have some sort of plan laid down anyways, even if it's not like completely set in stone. Yeah, and I think everybody needs some art direction if you want to make a game look good. Even if you're like solo developer or in small indie team or in a big studio as well. This is gonna just save you a lot of time because if you have the rules down, you don't have to use your brain that much to think again and again, make these decisions, because they are already made. And this will both save you energy and time, and also communication between different team members as well. I had a quick talk like 2 years ago on the Global Game Jam about, it was like a lightning talk about art direction in game jams. So it's even important to do like a half an hour for a game jam as well, and you will save so much time afterwards because you don't have to make those decisions again. You need it to make something cohesive, professional, and good looking. Nowadays, the like game market, if you want to sell something, visuals are the first thing people see, so it's important for it to look nice and make your game stand out from asset flips. And if you want to make your art yourself in the game, of course you can put together both assets, but then you will with art direction fit them together nicely as well. And it inspires everybody from musicians to programmers in your team to visualize the final product in their head more easily. It's an exciting thing to talk about, art direction, and if you have like a strong vision, that will really motivate other team members as well and be like, oh, I'm excited to work on this and then to get this in a place. Otherwise, if it has a different like vision in everybody's heads and they're not sure really, the motivation can be not as strong. So I personally like art direction because I really like aesthetics and interesting visuals. This is why I felt like this would be the best job for me. I really love working with creative people. It really inspires me seeing people who are really great at what they do as well. I spend a lot of time dreaming and figuring things out, so a lot of the art direction work is just done in my head while I'm, I don't know, zoning out in the shower or something like that. And I'm not super great at drawing, but I know some art theory. So I really love art, but I don't like to sketch or draw too much. And this means that I could hire people who actually can do it well, and it's nice. And I want to make my creative vision come true and make video games, and this really helps me do that. The picture is like a poster that I made some time ago. It's just it was a visual identity for a event, so choosing the colors and everything. So that was also like art direction, but for a event, for example. And you could do arts for a lot of different things and decide. So I have, like I said, Death and Taxes, Broken Alliance, currently, and a lot of game jam games that I have countless amount of that I have also made art direction for. I also have a very controversial option that being a art director or a creative director is really cool if you don't work in a big team with investors and well-known IPs. I was dreaming of, oh my god, I want to be an art director and I want to do it in a big company on a big scale. And then I was watching interviews of art directors. I was reading their blogs, and every time I did that, I felt like less and less I want to do that, because a lot of their creativeness is actually taken away by investors who are saying, no, but this wouldn't sell, we need to do that. Or there's well-known IPs where they need to, but Spider-Man needs to be this exact red color, and the fans will be angry if it's not that kind of things. So there was some art director who said that 90%, 95% of his job is keeping artists in line of doing the things that they needed to do, and 5% maybe like deciding on some art things, because everything else is told to them by whoever is on the board and on the lead, because everybody might feel like, oh, I want to have the creative control, and the art director, who actually might have reasons to know better why things should be in a way, they really don't. So I decided that I'm gonna be a art lead in a smaller team. Also, the difference between in big companies, they might have art director, and under them they might have art leads as well that are like have their own departments. So if it's a very large production, so in some ways, if you call yourself an art director and there's only a few, I do that still, but if there's a few people only working under you, then some people from bigger companies might say that, oh, you're calling yourself a director, but there's only like 2 people making the art, so it's more like an art lead or something. But there's no certain number there, like what's an art director or art lead. Anyways, we have this on this on the side, and how I see art direction is, it is building a sandbox, and artists or yourself are the people who are playing it in that sandbox. You decide on what are the borders of the sandbox, and you decide on what tools are in the sandbox. And you might say like, hey, this is the creative vision that I want to have in the end, and let's make it together. And you can decide what the sandbox, maybe the sandbox actually has snow in there. So yeah, you can get really creative, but there are the borders. And if there's some artist or yourself who is like getting out of the line with their art, making some other things. For example, you have a game where there's only animal characters, and then they suddenly start making human characters in there. And then you have 2 options there. You either say, hey, like very softly, like, this doesn't really work, I think, I'm gonna hear you out, let's talk this through. Why did you make this decision? And then explain why the decisions were made before. Or the other way of doing is saying, okay, you can continue what you're doing, this is fine. I will reshape the box so your creation fits in there. There are animals and humans in this world, and I will change some other things to make it work with it. So that might even make something more interesting come out of it, because it's not one person's vision, but there's other people also putting their own, what they love to do most in there. So that flexibility can be a thing as well. Thanks for coming to my talk. No, we're just starting. So step 1, as I told, was laying down the borders, and these are your mental or physical tools, and I will go over them one by one in the next slides. Design thinking. This was just a regular picture that they had in the presentation software, so I was like, yeah, that actually works out. So it's design thinking is solving a problem and analyzing things overall. So basically, this is what you need to think of why you want to make something a certain color, for example. Saying that, oh, red, I just like red is a valid option, but more waterproof option is I want to use red because we need to have a very aggressive situation in this moment in the game. And design thinking means design versus art. Basically, art raises questions usually, and design answers questions. So if you are design thinking, then you're solving a problem. A problem might be, for example, that we don't have enough of this sort of games. So then it's like, how can we get there to do that. And I would say everybody could be an art director for a game if they just analyze things. Design thinking is looking into, for example, a game that you like or whatever, a art piece or something, and then try to pull it apart and tell why you like it. And if you understand that, then you could use those elements in your game, for example. And this is the basis of it all, really. Having some inspirations. The wider of your interests are, the better. If you're only taking inspirations from other video games, it can work out if you're doing it from a lot of video games, but it's better when you do it from classical art, your favorite comics, TV shows, nature, crafts, for example, what people do, whatever you find inspiring to you, then putting that knowledge into, for example, you like, I don't know, trains, you use that in your game, for example, and this is gonna add so much to it overall. Then you can think of the target audience and have empathy of what they would like. Or you can do it like me and some other people who just think of what they like and what kind of person they are. So you have to understand yourself to be able to make a game for yourself as well. For example, Death and Taxes is a very personal game for me because it kind of shows a lot of things that I like. I'm a big comic book style fan, so there's comics in there. I love watercolors, that's also in there. And the stylization overall is in the style that I love. It takes, like in history, some aesthetic styles, like Art Nouveau and also elements from film noir, and I love ancient Egypt, so I'm putting all that in there as well, and using the combinations of things that I like, kind of paints a personal preference to things, and that will, there's so many people out there, and I'm sure that there's plenty of people who would find things that you find amazing or interesting, also interesting. So mashing everything together in a game that you like might attract similar people to you, and then that's a good way to do it. Or you could make a game for example, for a friend, thinking of what's like their set of interests and do they go together for some reason. So knowing some other people as well could help us, taking them as an example of what kind of visuals to make the game. Also knowing what kind of emotions or story you want to give in the game itself. So depending on that, looking into color theory and different like compositions and art theory overall to know how to give different emotions to the players. Well, we know mostly when the music is sad or something, but it's also very strongly in visuals as well. Then you unfortunately have to make a lot of documents. It's all great if it's all in your head, like mishmash. Oh, I want to do this and this. This is what happens with everybody. It's the hardest part of just writing everything down. All the ideas, you have to get them on paper, otherwise they will not reach other people. So for that you need to make the art direction document and style guide. And that's basically can be just a text document, like in here for Broken Alliance. I was just writing down rules and, for example, keywords for what that popped into my head, and all of different rules that I come up with, or or even if it's kind of wibbly wobbly, I do that. Another thing that I love doing is mind maps. When you put something in the center, like you put in the center like the game Craft, and then you're putting things like crafting, merchant, medieval, fantasy, magical, like the different things, and then you start putting more words that are kind of connected to those, and you might get the bigger mind map from just your ideas about this and where you want to get it to. Second thing to do is mood boards. So everything you see visually online, just go on Pinterest or find games that you like, and or it doesn't even have to be games. It can be just the colors that you like that you would want to have in there, or anything you see inspiring. Putting it all together and seeing if it fits together. And this is a very, very great tool. Really, I use, for example, the PureRef program. It's free and stuff, so it's very nice to get some inspiration together in one place, or just Pinterest boards. Then style samples, that's basically the same thing, just from other games. Exactly, you're like, I really like these characters in this game, so I will put the style of them, how they look like in here. Or I really like how they draw trees in here. I wish I had that kind of thing in the game. So getting the style as well, not just the mood, into a board. And either deciding on color palette, I could go into the very deep, but I won't today. Deciding on a color palette, or getting it online, or just color picking from somebody else's art, because nobody owns colors. I'm always saying that steal the colors, that's fine. For example, remember there was a lot of hate for No Man's Sky when it came out, but I was just like, this has the best colors ever I have seen, so I used it for one Game Jam game, and then people were like, oh, so pretty colors. I was like, thanks, it's from from that game. So it doesn't matter really. So there was a Game Jam game where I was very inspired for some reason, and did like 3 different mood boards for colors only, just from artwork and from nature, to get inspired. And then I asked the team, hey, which one do you like? And they kind of said that they like these 2, and then I color picked and looked if it looks well together, and then I just mashed them together, and I made it into a color palette. So all of the different elements have, it's even better if you have like a very small game, then you know that, okay, snow is this color, and use the accent colors less, for example, but these are the main colors to use. The storm, for example, in the game, that's like very just dark and gray, that is needs to be the opposite of all the colorful things. So yeah, saying like which colors to use more and which colors to use less can help as well overall with the decision making. Yeah, that was how the Game Jam game looked like in the end. Art theory. This is one thing that I'm not talking too much about today. It just helps as an art director to know that, because when you're giving like feedback, or if you're deciding on things, then you have more reason, more explanation why you think some way. Sometimes people have quite a good eye to just, because they have been looking at things and they're like, this is really good and I love it this way, it should be like this way more. But also knowing art theory, then your vocabulary will be better about saying, giving feedback to artists as well. And it's when you're deciding what kind of game art to make, it's really good to have knowledge of your team members' strengths, or yourself. What are you good at? For example, if they're super good artists and they're saying, I'm super flexible, I could follow any style, yes, then you have the freedom of making it in any style you want. But if you already have members and they have very, very strong personal style, for example, in our team, our concept artist, Raido is really good at pencil drawings, making clean pencil drawings. So not to have that go to waste, we actually just vectorize his clean, very lovely pencil drawings. Usually concept artists with pencils just make the concepts and then the things are made again.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I did not expect that to come so soon.
And but yeah, it's good to use what you have, and also the then you can decide, oh, we have a lot of 3D artists, for example, in the team, we should make it 3D because that's what you do best. Or if you're alone making something, then maybe you're like, oh, I know some in color theory, so I will use that. Or I love drawing monsters or something like that, then just use that, and that will be your strength. So you don't do anything. Of course, you can push boundaries and learn, but that will be slower. If you want to do something that you can't do at all, or you don't have people in the team who can't do at all, then, well, I don't choose these things usually. Maybe I find somebody who can, if that's possible. But overall, it's just looking at what we can do. So it's not. It already does some decisions for you, basically. So decisions, colors. Use less colors if you're not comfortable with them yet. For example, Death and Taxes is using only 3 hues, just on different opacity and lightness, kind of. But the colors are completely same, like yellow, blue, and red. And you can do so much with it, and everything will look more in line, and it fits well together. So I made a lot of outfits and characters, like colorings for them, and they all kind of fit together just because I'm using so little colors in there. So that's just great. If you're not very knowledgeable in colors, it's not a good idea to go on with like just all the colors everywhere, like that needs a bit more knowledge with that, but starting slow with a few ones and then adding more is a good idea. You can find the color palettes, as I said, steal the colors, nobody owns them, and put down the ratio of color usage as well, all the things that I talked about already. Deciding on 2D or 3D, what tools to use. For example, if your team members can use different tools, then it's the question, is it possible to make similar art in that sort of tools? So you have to make that decision as well. If you have multiple artists with vastly different styles, for example, a game jam or something like that, then decide on who is making the character art, or who is making the UIs, who is making the backgrounds. Because if one artist does everything in their own style, and the other one does everything in their own style, and that's like characters are different from the backgrounds, that's much better than having 2 different characters and 2 different backgrounds, and then it gets like really eclectic. So that's very that's not as good. So depending on what kind of things they do, you could even have like 2D backgrounds, 3D character art or whatever. But just if you have some rules down, then or at least colors and some other rules, then it will be fine if other people do it in a bit different styles. You have to decide what is the stylization level. Is it photorealistic? Is it very cartoony? Is it somewhere in between? Or it could be, it can be like very messy or very in different ways, really. And for that you would need to look up references to decide on as well. And this is from Craft, the character. You can decide on what is the line weight if you're doing 2D art. Are the outlines angular or smooth? What brushes are used? So giving the same brush to all of the artists, for example, is gonna help so much already. So consistency and clarity in style, shape, size, and line of things. So everything is the same size, same line weight. If you can get these things under control, then everything will go smoothly, I feel like. And how does the shading style and lighting look like? That can also be overlooked sometimes, because especially if it's a 3D game, lighting overall can change the look drastically. Everybody has made the assets and then they're put into the world, and then but the lighting is all different, so you have to think of that as well. For example, we decided to make pink shadows for everything in Craft because it looks more modern, more interesting, and more light and friendly than just putting dark gray shadows on things. So these kinds of things can just, even the shadows can affect the overall mood so much. And what is the resolution as well? That is one of the first things to decide on as well, depending on if you want to make it in 2D, in 4K or something, or if you're making pixel art, how big it is. Because then when you start making the assets, if you find out that things are kind of different line weights or different resolution, then it's just work that you will have to redo, and that's the saddest part, and it's annoying, I feel like. So what emotions we are trying to show the player? This is a game jam I did where it's a psychological horror about mental health, and I made different color palettes to show the colors are slowly changing between each other depending on what mood the character is in. So it's like a normal room where it is if the character goes insane, gets very pissed, everything gets red, or gets depressed and everything is quite gray. To show the mental health state in the game, that is important as well. And you can make up any rules you want. I just usually if I have a lot of thoughts that can't be really strictly explained, I just write everything down, even if it's half ideas, and I'm thinking of these, maybe these colors for rich and aesthetic, fancy, old-timey feel, or maybe gemmy colors, these ones, putting it all down, basically, that will help. And some of it might be even kind of against each other, and then you have to choose afterwards, but putting things into a document will always help, really. And some bonus tips are: be inspired by music and make a playlist for your project. So if you play that playlist while you're thinking about the direction, then you will more strongly feel about this. and you can just listen to it, and while you can share it with other team members as well, and they can, while coding, listen to the music, for example, and they will get more of the feeling for the game as well with that. And you can also think what the project is not, because all of the other things that I was telling was like what the project is, but you can also say this is not a like, for example, this is, if it's a cute farming game, then saying that, but it's not like, for example, a you could say like it's not a horror game, but you could also say like I'm not thinking of Stardew Valley, I'm thinking of a different kind of a thing. So if you say what the project is not as well, then that will also cut off the like vision somewhere and put the border down. So if somebody is like, oh, is it like that, then it's like, no, it's not like that. That's the idea. And if you can make the style guide before anybody joins your team or the art team, more like, or anybody joins the project, basically. Why I am saying this is that if you have a strong vision in your head and you give it to people to work on, then they will not, if it's like unfinished idea and they start thinking their own way, then they might keep that in their head and make it a completely different vision in their own head, and then there's like 4 people working on the same project who have different vision of what this game is. And if you're not saying like this is what it is and kind of telling it like right away, then they might be falling too in love with their own idea. It sounds a bit like strict, because I really personally want to give some creative freedom for everybody who's working in the team. But if they have completely different vision, then that's gonna hurt the project overall. So the best way I'm usually doing it, I'm deciding things first and then I'm gonna talk to others. And we will change if something needs to be changed. But then there's like a base, like a good building base where you can, foundation where you can start from. And this is the second part. Step 2, keep to the rules. And these are your mental and physical tools for this, and we will go over them. So the documents you have made now, these are the main tools you have. Thank you, past me, for making the documents, and now I will read them and not forget them at any point, because sometimes new ideas come in, and then it's, you know, you might like rewriting the, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's like completely change this, and then not change it in the document, and then you look at the document and you look at new ideas and you're like, we have 2 completely different visions here, and like what's better and why did we make these decisions. So you can aim for each artist in your team to have a clear understanding on what your game should look like. So you have to give them the style guide and discuss why you have made the decisions. That can be very inspiring as well, like talking very excitedly, like, oh, this can be this, and imagine a world where these things, so they will get excited about that. So that makes artists feel less intimidated by a blank canvas. It's interesting how I have seen how people work, like if you don't give them a strict like rule set in some way, you don't build the boundaries to the sandbox. The sandbox doesn't have boundaries, it's just a beach. they kind of are like, I could do this or I could do this, and then they kind of get stuck in there. But if you make the like sandbox, then they're gonna be, oh, I could, like, these are the boundaries, I could make so many interesting things out of it. So boundaries make creativity, really. So some people might be intimidated by a blank canvas. So even if you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to just direct everything they need to do, you don't have to do that at all, but you can put down the boundaries and they will make something interesting in those boundaries that might even surprise you, really. So that's cool. You need to be have empathy again in this step as well. Just take care of your team members. Artists have the reasons why they want to be an artist, and if you know what these reasons are, maybe they want to become better skillfully, maybe they want to express themselves, maybe they want to put something out there that impacts people, maybe they want to be in a project that 100% gets finished. So see what your team members want. That's also for a creative director. See what your team members want, and if you can provide it to them or to yourself. What do you want, and can you provide it to yourself? So you can give them the freedom they might need, and they might be less inspired if they can't play to their strengths at all. So you can enable them by giving them the freedom. They're like, oh, but I really like, I don't know, furry characters. And you're like, well, let's put this in the game. We can make this. This can happen. So like, if you say no too much to them, they might be less inspired. So, and if they also feel like, oh, I came up with this idea, can we make it? And I'm usually trying to bend the project to have it well tied into the style. So they will take some ownership of some creative decisions, and they will be more inspired thanks to that. So they will feel like, oh, I decided on this character here that, or I decided everybody's wearing hats in this game, and that's the thing about this game, and I'm very proud of it. So happy and proud and well cared for team members make awesome things. don't suppress your artist. They need especially much room sometimes, but also put the boundaries down. So it's like a balance to keep. So don't talk everything to yourself. But of course, some creative directors are like, put their foot down and say, this is how it is. We are not changing it. This is also a valid way of doing it. But I personally love when everybody can add their own personality to the project. That really helps, because the game doesn't have your face only. It has the face of all of those people who are working on the game, and that makes a more rich and interesting thing in the end. Yeah. Patience and determination. Making big projects is hard. There's always new shiny ideas to go after, new game ideas, and sometimes if the game goes long enough, then you might, or maybe it's 2 years later and your tastes in aesthetics have changed completely. I don't know, maybe it doesn't happen to everybody, but that can happen, and then you need to keep on to your plan. If it's not costly, you can change it a bit, but keeping to your vision. There are so many cool things you can do. Just keep going, do the one thing, complete that, see that it's done in the way you wanted it to be, and carry on. And I don't know, it just takes some. I feel like it takes this kind of energy that Patrick is having in there. This is me with all of the great game ideas or art aesthetics ideas, or like, for example, looking through artist portfolios that have all different styles of art, and I can make this game, oh my god, that would look so great. Like, they have like this they are making like historical art in there, like that would feel so real if we had that kind of. Then it's like, no, this is the plan. Stick to the plan. Yeah. So be like Patrick in here and stick to the plan. don't mine all of those crystals. Yeah. And you have to have a lot of enthusiasm for what you're doing. If you are saying, I don't know, we have this game idea and it's gonna be inspired by these things. I don't know. It's just. Then I don't think anybody else is gonna be like enthused because of your ideas. If you're gonna tell them, oh, we're making this crafting game and it's gonna be the first like game that gives this kind of feeling that you're crafting in real life things and it's gonna be magical, and I'm so excited to do it and I really want to get this vision done, and with your help I can do it, then people might much more want to help you and want to go with the vision, because they're yeah that sounds great, like talking about them, oh, you can do so many things with this, and that's very inspiring. So talking enthusiastically about your idea, even if you have a bad day, then just think about that the idea is great and I have to talk about it and I will do it in a positive way, because I mean, I don't have to force too hard because I love my job, but yeah, I can't afford to just go on like, I don't know. Yeah. Then try pivoting if something goes wrong, and you need to change something, then just do whatever you can to change things. So keeping some things open can be useful sometimes. And for example, you have an artist and your art style depends on that artist really, and then it turns out that they will have to leave your team, and what then? What are you gonna do then? Well, you might find a new person that does that kind of art, or maybe you have to count your losses, or there maybe use this kind of art only in part of the game and then make it make sense somehow. So it's just gluing things together into I don't know, Frankenstein monster that's looking kind of like human. That's what you need to do as an art director, I guess. Yeah, so that was it, and let's repeat what we have learned. Firstly, lay down a path and rules for visual design of the game. Don't forget to document everything. Step 2, keep to the rules and help artists in the team to do so too. Play to your strengths. And doing art direction overall, it will help your team to save time and make a nice looking game. And try to be inspiring and make thought through decisions, but leave some creative work for the artists as well. Yes, thank you. Any questions?
I did have one, but I forgot it.
Yes?
I have like a lot of them, but first off, this talk was amazing. I think you wrapped up every topic very, very nicely. I think I probably would want to have a talk about each column that you talked about. For example, like your way of color picking and picking the mood and everything, and how you pull out the color scheme out of pictures and then translate that into the game. Like, there's so much more in there, and I'm like, that's, for example, a process I would like to see, because especially like as a newer artist, you would make the mistake with the values a lot and then put values in there, and then the colors wouldn't come out, and like all this kind of stuff. So I would really love to see that process of how you pull these colors out of the picture and then put it into the game, and then how you make the decision to like put this together and what kind of. I would like seen an example work of when you do that. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that would have been a very long talk.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, colors are my favorite part, so I feel like I could totally do a whole talk about colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk then.
Well, if you have time to prepare, I mean, you have time, but it doesn't have to be like a talk each week.
Maybe.
But
No, I'll do maybe once a month or something like that. I could do some more. Yes. Yes.
So I'm curious, could you maybe give an example of a specific problem you ran into when you were working with multiple artists and and how you tackled the issue, like how you solved the problem?
Yeah. I tried to so different artists. Currently, what I am doing is if somebody is not doing a thing in the way that fits the style, then I'm trying to softly tell them like, hey, could you change it a bit like this? Could you change it a bit like this? If it's still like it's almost, but it's good to have, for example, then that character or that artist can make that sort of like just animations for characters, for example. If you feel like, well, that it doesn't, like the drawings themselves don't still fit perfectly, I will put them into animation and they will do only the animations, so nobody will kind of know. But it has happened where I'm doing also test jobs is a good way to do. So if you're adding an artist to the team, somebody makes that happened as well recently, where somebody was making some art and I thought they would be doing it in the style that I wanted, and it kept on, even though I was saying like, hey, change this and change this, they weren't. So I had to unfortunately say like, okay, we'll have to cut our losses and we'll pay you for your time, but yeah, we can't go on with this. So it's hard. Situations like this are the hardest part for me, if I have to say like, hey, this doesn't work out really. Yeah, that's the non-fun part. It's fun to hire people, but it's not fun to let them go. Yeah, either put them to do something else, what they could do, or make sure that they at first can do the thing. And if they can't, then maybe they're not the right person for the project, unfortunately. Yes, so these are the ways I have dealt with it. Not to make too much art that it's gonna be... I hate waste of work, waste of time for people, so I want to... we have also done these things where it's like there's a lot of concept art and we can't use it really because we don't have those characters or something, but then reuse these, make like changes. If there's like basis of something that is not polished or finalized, then reuse that. Maybe they will just sketch it all up, different things, and somebody else will polish it all up to look like it should, because they can do that. That's also a way to stop that. I guess that it wasn't like certain story time that maybe you wanted. But
No, but it was a good answer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tintin?
First of all, I agree with Galadriel over the whole please go into color theory deeper at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, I was also wondering, the teams that you're talking about, how big are they usually? Is there a kind of team size that you think is optimum? Does this vary with game, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. Our like game teams that I have been working on are like the teams themselves are 8 to 10 people, but the artists have been from 2, myself included, because I like also getting my hands dirty in the sandbox. Or 2-4. Yeah. Yes.
You mentioned that you a lot of times have this moment where you feel like an asset is like almost there but not quite, and then you kind of probably also feel the need of, yeah, I gotta like fix this now. That's something that I can relate to, and my problem with this is it's hard for me to like basically decide when is the point of I'm just gonna leave it now, it's close enough. How do you draw the line there? Like, do you have some kind of set of rules that you follow that to not overload yourself with work? Because I can imagine like there's always something, right? You always see something there that like could be like just closer, and you're gonna go crazy if you like don't take a step back at some point.
Yeah, well, the art direction can take into account the time it would take to do things as well. So you can't like over polish things. Have the art direction and say that it looks a bit sketchy, or it looks, for example, for Death and Taxes, there's only a few colors, so you can't go on and change the colors for 20 times, for example, and be like, oh, I don't know about this color, maybe this color is better, no, this color. Like, you don't have that freedom if you force yourself down to that. And also it's very hard, I think, when somebody's things are like if there's another artist whose things are like almost there, but then you have to also ask, like, right away when you start working together with them, are they fine if some other artist will go over their work or not? So that's like asking for permission for that would be just nice as well, if somebody else. Fortunately, my mind stops me from overworking. I am not able to overwork really hard, so I just need to take a break, and my body and mind will stop me from working too hard on these things. I think it's personally a bit easier for me because I'm also project manager, partly, because then I will see, like, if we put too much time onto this, a lot of my work is, this is good enough, let's go. that's a lot of like, yeah, we don't have time, let's go on to the next thing. So yeah, even if some artists want to, like, oh, but this animation, for example, I could work on this for 2 more weeks, but it's like, but the whole animation was supposed to take 2 weeks, so it's gonna double the time. Let's not do that. So if you know kind of this is how long it should kind of, yeah, perfectionism is hard, and I know it's, but I don't know, make the asset creation easy enough, and don't have in the art direction saying that everything looks super polished, because then you will spend so much time on that. I guess. Anybody else? Would you like to play a small game? So last time Jay was talking about color harmonies. And you wanted to get some more color stuff in here, so that's perfect. So if you remember, these are the different color harmonies that you can have, that you could use. Complementary ones are the opposite colors on the color wheel. Analogous ones are ones that are very similar to each other, close by. Triadic one is just plopping down a triangle here and have it balanced in that way. Split complementary is basically you don't have to have all the sides the same size. Then rectangle and square as well. We're mostly looking at these 3, so remember that. And I'm gonna ask you guys, what is this one? What is?
Complementary.
Yes, this is complementary one. That's the that uses orange and blue, and mostly, and here they are. It's kind of in between these, I would say, in here. The next one is this one.
Next to it, the
Yeah.
triangle,
That's analogs. Yeah, they are in here somewhere. These colors are used in here. And this one,
Is that monotone?
yes, exactly, monochromatic one. Good. This one, this is a bit harder. There's more colors here.
Triangular.
No,
Split now 3 colors. Blue,
the thin.
pink, yellow.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like split complementary. No, wait.
If you rotate
It's pink,
straight,
blue, both mostly, but it also has the darker blue in here. I mean, there are these colors, I think, in here, kind of. But there's a tiny amount of yellow that kind of contrasts just the focus point in here. So I would say split complementary, probably. Or just analogous and complementary put together, like you can totally do that as well. It's just something like that, I would say, with that one. This one.
Could that be rectangular?
It's blue, pink, and yellow.
I think it's
Blue, pink, and yellow. Yep, maybe that's the either split complementary or triadic. 3 colors in here, yes. I would say something like that. This one. Yeah.
I would say it's monochromatic, but it also
Yeah.
feels more like grayscale a little bit.
Yeah, it is monochromatic. They have like different levels in the game where it's all about one color only, really, to make the different levels feel different. That's totally that you can use that. And this one,
That doesn't look like him at all.
maybe. I mean, it has blue, yellow, and it has red. I would say as a third one usually, but so it's blue, yellow, and red. I don't know. It's don't know exactly, but it's the main 3 colors. So I think it's just a. Wait, no. Well, it was the last.
Can I ask a question to that?
Yes.
So the last picture, for example, it had, of course, the colors in there, but it also had black and white a lot
Yeah.
on the screen. So
Yeah.
more like values
Mhm.
then. And I think that what makes it tricky then, when you do that, would you put that in a palette as well, or in a? Because they are so big on the screen, but they're not always put into the palette then like themselves,
Yeah.
because they are values and not a color.
I do put black and white into palettes as well, and I love to put into palettes also, and to say like maybe it's like a off black, it's only like dark brown or cream color, then it makes it more interesting. And then say on the palette, use this instead of black, use this instead of white. So if you want something to be white, then use this, and if you want something, never use pure black or white. I just put all the colors that can be used on a palette. It can also be, you can say also to the artists, you can switch the lightness and darkness, but don't switch the hue. That is also like, so having these kind of directions on the color palette, that it's not just like these colors, but maybe you're having a style where the colors can be layered. What then? Then there will be new colors emerging. What is that allowed? Is that not allowed? You decide on that. So yeah, I usually just like to do a strict palette and be like, if there's any color that I see that's not on the palette, just no. No, especially when we're on like game jams. and giving the palette saying to programmers as well, all the fonts, everything, just these colors, nothing else, like on the screen. Yeah.
So you really do that. You just do this sheet with the colors on, and
Mhm.
then you basically give this to the artist. Like
Mhm.
this is this color pick from that. Put it into your file.
Yes.
Okay.
Colors have to be quite like strict because otherwise it will look messy. Yeah. Yes.
How would you approach color palette mindset if you had more of a realistic looking thing? Because in the real world, all colors will
Mhm.
happen. But you still want it to be a bit stylized,
Mhm.
like overall.
Well, that's an interesting question. I saw a interesting talk about color correction as well in video games. So you can have a color correction afterwards on top of everything. Or you could decide that you want to, if it's realistic, well, in realistic world it's kind of messy. If it's stylized a bit, you can use, say, like, okay, colorful items can be only blue and green. Other like brownish, greenish things, everything can be natural, but use more like pops of color, like you would in internal design, for example. Say like, oh, there's a pop of color of one wall is like yellow or something, then use that in there if you want it stylized. If you want it realistic, then, well, go ham with colors. We will do a color correction afterwards. Maybe put the like sepia tone on top of it, or make it all different in a way. Yeah.
I would think probably to have a color palette in mind and then choose to make things generally this kind of color.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
even though it also might have some other color.
Yeah, you can totally say like making a, I don't know, realistic war game. Then you don't want artists to make like pink and yellow things. Then but maybe you want to, but then it's not realistic, really. I would say, but
Or
maybe
fill it in the
depends.
flower field.
Yeah, yeah. So, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that when you're going for realistic, you often go with blue and orange as your highlights, as your lights, and then the rest, the consistency is done through tone mapping using LUTs, lookup tables. Those are really popular and prevalent, and like you can find a lot of resources on how to use LUTs to color grade your game.
How is it called? Lots?
LUT.
LUT. Ah.
Knowing some of how the light works in real life, for example, why a lot of times like the lights are warm and the shadows are cool toned or blue. It's also because, I don't know, sun has like warmish color, and then that gives the highlight, and sky has the bluish color, so that will reflect on everything as well, and you will then have that sort of thing. So you can decide on realistic stuff also what kind of lighting you want, or the post processing, I think. Yeah.
Also related to one of the things you said, it's not super important question, but you said like you should let team members have the ability to take ownership of things. For example, I decided that everyone should wear a hat. Has there been like occasions where you have thought about a lot about these tiny ideas and you thought hats would be a really good idea, but you chose not to say it so that someone could come up with it themselves, and then you be like in your head, I'll let them have that because then they will be more happy.
I haven't had that kind of situation, but I have had situation where, because you are all playing in the same sandbox, you do have the same ideas already. They're like, oh, that makes sense. So different people might think that, but you haven't written it down or communicated, and then they might come up with it. I haven't done it on purpose though, but it can really happen, because if you're all in the same mindset, then the similar things might emerge, and that's great if that happens. Yeah. Okay, I hope you all now know more about art direction or have an overview of what it is. If you didn't yet, then yeah, and thanks.
What do we have? Do you have anything on next week? Do you have another talk next week that's going to be on?
Yes.
Are you okay streaming?
Yeah, we have another talk on more programming part, and so it's gonna talk about how to. What are you gonna talk about?
Improving performance, so it's more technical.
Improving performance next week. Okay, and if anybody wants to give a talk, please do so, and yeah, let me know. There are now openings starting from the week before next one. Yes.
The chat says awesome talk.
Okay,
Multiple
thank you.
No question.